This is a teacher training program, not a Pilates training program. It's a teacher training program. So while, yes, we would love to see proficiency in the exercises, so you can feel it in your body and you can understand what your students are going through. Our goal, what you are being graded or assessed on, is your ability to teach the program. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Female Empowered Podcast. I have again a guest episode. I've really batched a bunch of guest episodes because I've come across a bunch of amazing people that I'm like, come on my podcast and help me talk about this topic. So today I have Nora Reynolds here with me, who is the chief. I love that she says this, the Chief Innovation Officer, because I think I said at one point, like, what was I? At Pilates in the Grove. I can't remember, but it was something in that sense of I think I'm gonna butcher the name. Is it Archeon? No.
Arikian.
Arikian. I knew, and I even pronounced it phonetically when I was in my head. Hot yoga. And tell us where that is, because you don't live in the same place that the studios are, which is very interesting.
So it's a family business, and we have studios in Raleigh, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Durham, and also Salt Lake City, Utah. So
that's
and
great.
I'm actually in Greensboro, so I'm kind of in the middle of
You're in the middle of everything.
Carolina.
I know. Yeah. And then your most recent business venture is called Strength Through Fitness University. And that's primarily what we're going to talk about today, because it's an amazing fitness instructor program that incorporates everything. So we're going to get into the nitty gritty of all of that. But the yoga studio came first. So why don't you give our audience a little background of who you are, how you got into this industry, and then how Strength Through Fitness University came to be.
Okay, strength through focus. So
strength through focus.
That's fine. And so many years ago, our family is very athletic. So my husband's a coach. My kids were all athletes at the Division I and even at the Olympic Training Center. And so we've been in the fitness kind of area, the athletic area, for a long time. And when my daughter she played soccer at Illinois, and she was in between semesters and decided she wanted to do a training in yoga. So she did a yoga teacher training, and then went back to Illinois and taught sorority girls in their sororities to make a little extra money when athletes couldn't make extra money. I shouldn't probably say that.
Exactly.
And then when she got out, she took a stint in Brazil. My sons were in wrestling, and we decided that we would open a hot yoga studio, hot yoga and circuit training in Raleigh. So we did that, and that's been over 15 years ago now. So, and then we've expanded from there. So that's kind of where it came out of. And Strength Through Focus University actually comes out of more my strengths, my background, which is in higher ed for 40 plus years, and a lot of work in distance learning when it was, you would mail, you'd get in the car and drive somewhere and teach you, and evolved through, to labs where you could do two-way to online. And so that's kind of the intersection of our evolution.
That's amazing. And so tell us a little bit about what your background is in higher education.
Sure. I led a team at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, for over 30 years. And that was in distance education, summer session programming, kind of the creative kind of programming that was non-credit and credit. And we had a really fantastic team of developers in the online space. And I had a dean that was really creative, different times, and allowed us to do a lot of really interesting things in online that people weren't doing. So for example, back in 1997, I think it was, we created a microeconomics course that was game-like online.
Oh,
and
cool.
For a business school. So little things like that. And so my curiosity about learning and how people learn and how they develop skills kind of comes from the work I did at university and the learning piece of what was going on there, and then watching athletes learn, and how do people who are developing in skill areas, what makes a high performer there? And
Mhm.
kind of the same process kind of comes together for both, which is interesting.
It's so interesting. Maybe that game would have helped me like economics a little bit better. Uh, we were talking pre-show. My family and my husband's family are both in education. So I've learned over the years how much really goes into developing these sound educational systems, and how the instructors, whomever is teaching, right, can really, what skills and traits and technology can we use to make the learning optimize as much as possible. It's not just standing in front of a room and teaching curriculum. And so it's really fascinating to me. And from a physical side, so my background is in physical therapy, we do a ton of studies in, how would I say it? I would say like it's like motor learning and motor processing. And so from a way that we can learn, and what you were talking about in athletes, I was involved in a research study about athletic performance and biomechanical motor learning. And we've done all of these studies based on if you do a lot in a little period of time, right? If you're doing tremendous amount of work in a short period of time, or if you're doing a little bit of work over a long period of time, and how that, the motor planning process in your system. So these kind of things to me are like fascinating. And I really believe that in the world of boutique fitness, which we are all in, and the beauty of from what you are doing is you have both sides of it. Like you're front facing, so you know what is happening in the industry, and then you're helping serve a need, really. And we see a lot of instructors come out of programs, and you're kind of like, hmm, okay, so that's great. You can do, a forearm stand really well, but can you teach the forearm stand? And all of us have had teachers in our life. I don't care if they were coaches or English professors or something, that we've really said that person reached me in a way that's different. And at least for my Pilates instructors, that's what I want them to learn. Okay. So now let's talk about a little bit of Strength Through Focus University, and what was the forethought or the foresight of like, why does our industry need this? And I do believe our industry does need this. So how was this like birthed into creation?
So anyone who has a fitness studio knows you need good teachers, as you've noted. And when we first started, we discovered very quickly years ago that many people would come through with a certification, but lack the skill to actually teach. Teaching in itself is a skill in addition to being able to perform, as you noted. So we just started creating our own teacher training programs for our yoga studio, first and foremost, because we needed teachers and we wanted good teachers that could actually teach. So we started that. It was in person, and we did a variety of formats, weekends, whatever. And at a point about 8 or 9 years ago, it dawned on me that we could be more effective if we moved that program online. And I had I had a lot of experience in online learning, from seeing really bad stuff there as well. Stuff that just didn't, just a bunch of information out there, to what could actually work. But I felt there was a way that we could create a framework that would actually get to the place we wanted to go and actually be more effective than in person. And when I say that, it's because of this. If you have a group classroom, it doesn't matter if you have 10 students, you have 25 students, whatever. It is virtually impossible. And it doesn't matter what you're trying to teach. It's impossible to touch each individual person all the time. And not every person can actually demonstrate what they're learning frequently enough and get feedback, because it's impossible to do in an in-person setting. But with the tools that have evolved in the online space, and which have been phenomenal growth over the last 20, 30 years, it has become really affordable and accessible to actually get the best of learning into an online framework if done right. Now, I've studied and I continue to look at programs in fitness certification, fitness teacher trainings all the time, every day practically. I'm looking at someone else's stuff, and several things came to light. So we built this program, Christa. We have refined it. We made some tweaks in it, and I will be honest. My own children were skeptical at first that we could do this online and do it.
Well,
and I'm like, just trust me. I used to do this, if it works, it's all yours, all your credits to you. If it fails, you can blame me and we'll be done. I used to do that at the university a lot. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. So if it works, you get the credit. If it fails, just blame me. But we've refined a framework, which basically teaches, oh, sorry.
Oh, that's okay. You're good. You're good.
Teaches skills. How do you develop skills? Because there's a big difference in having information and knowledge. Correct. And having skill. And so think about it this way. If I don't know if you're familiar with Montessori method of preschool and elementary, but Montessori developed a system years ago, over 100 years ago now. She was a physician. She was working with a special population. She developed a system that was both self-correcting and is gone against the test of time. And the instructors in her program are more of the guide, the coach on the side than the sage on the stage, which is what we talk about at the university a whole lot, the lecture delivery, the whatever. So I've worked all those kind of elements into a framework that I think really works effectively. And we're really excited about it, how it works. And it deals with one of the biggest problems in curriculum. And this doesn't matter where, doesn't matter if it's in fitness, doesn't matter if it's in higher ed, elementary, whatever. There's a tendency, and it's not because people are trying to do things, from a easy way or a lazy way. There's a tendency to have too much stuff.
Yes.
And not to look at where you want to go, but to say, this is what I want to teach. And it doesn't matter what you want to teach. What really matters is, what do you want your student to be able to do at the end? And how will you get them there? And how will you know when they get there? And so that is the way to develop a curriculum or a framework that actually can get to the results, the competencies that you want to end up with for every student. And that's where we feel we've come with strength through focus. I think that, and so as we did the yoga, we've done a number of yoga certification programs. And then the same framework can work in other modalities. Why? Because it's based on a set of principles. And the principles and basic foundational skill sets that you need to develop in order to get to that place you want to be at. So that's kind of where we're at. And so we've refined it. We're building out Pilates, mat Pilates, reformer Pilates, bar, yoga, and it brings together what I know and what our group knows now to an audience in boutique fitness, where their skills, their strengths are in running a studio, teaching classes, all those things, and not necessarily in building curriculum.
No, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
A few things that you said that sparked my attention. One, you said 7 or 8 years ago, which is pre-COVID. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So you're doing this before everyone is going online. There, at least, again, I can only speak from the Pilates world. But back then there were very few, if any, people that had digitized their program. And if they did, it was very expensive, and it was very expensive to enroll and participate in that. A lot of people started digitizing after COVID just because that's what everyone was doing, right? The other thing I will say, the big pushback that people did, at least in the Pilates world, was you can't teach that way. And I think that in any industry, I don't care what it is, if you don't adapt, you will be left behind at some point. So at every juncture, I don't care if it's the iPhone or something. There was always people that were like, that's not going to work. And so if we never innovate and adapt, we'll be stuck in the same thing all the time. Right. And
Right.
so my feeling is how great that now we can bring teacher training programs to cities and towns and markets that maybe they don't have a teacher training program there, and then these people have to travel, and I can tell you from Pilates, they're very expensive, right?
Mhm.
And now that they have to travel and pay and all of this stuff, so that's phenomenal. The other thing you said that is 100% true is people don't think of curriculum. They think of exactly what you said. They think of, I need to teach all of this. And that's how I'm developing my program, not on the competencies. And I know for us, most people start a teacher training program. I will tell you, it's not for the revenue. So if any of you are out there listening and you're like, I'm starting a teacher training program because I'm going to make millions of dollars, I'm just here to tell you it ain't happening, at least right away. Most of us start them because we need teachers. And so we start our own
Mhm.
program so that we can train. It's like on the job training, right? So,
Mhm.
and we're just behind the eight ball 90% of the time. But what I tell in our teacher training program from the beginning, I've always said, this is a teacher training program, not a Pilates training program. It's a teacher training program. So while, yes, we would love to see proficiency in the exercises, so you can feel it in your body and you can understand what your students are going through. Our goal, what you are being graded or assessed on, is your ability to teach the program. And I can speak, certainly, I did not have a good idea of developing curriculum at the beginning. I was like, well, this is what they tell us we have to teach. And little by little, it's developed. But now I love the fact that you can bring this to people and we don't have to do all of it. And you started with yoga, which was what your bread and butter is. And you're right. The foundational things are you're teaching competencies, right? So what are some of the competencies that you try to develop in the training program, right? Because whether you're teaching yoga or Pilates or spin, there are a few things as teachers we all need to do. So what are some of those competencies that are included in your program?
So, so the first thing is you have to think about where do you want someone to end up? So you'd start from the very end. So just as you said, the dirty little secret in yoga, I will say, is that we call them teacher training programs, but most of them don't teach people to teach. But so you start with, okay, I want them to be able to teach a group class or private session or whatever. That's the highest level skill. How am I going to get them there? So what we know is that there's a certain amount of information you have to have. And information is where most curricula sit. They put all of their eggs in that basket.
Mm-hmm.
They
Mm-hmm.
have, so you'll see we have 600 hours of video that you can watch forever. And we have a 200-page manual that you'll get. And you can use it for the rest of your life and all this. But the issue is that we won't do it. And
Right.
it's overwhelming. So you have to say, here's the skill set I want. And so, Christa, to just kind of give you a kind of overview of how we
Mm-hmm.
do a program. First thing is we say, all right, you will, in competencies, you can have 5, 6 competencies for a course. Here's the competency. You will be able to, will be able to demonstrate and know the information and the skill it takes to understand the exercises in Pilates, for example.
Okay.
So we break them individually and we do very short instructional video, very short. And then we ask the student, the one in the teacher training program, you demonstrate to us. Now, we don't do self-paced programs because self-paced puts too much back on the learner and not enough accountability. So we have assignment dates, but so we have you, and there's certain things with getting in and out of that exercise that are pretty standard. You want to be able to get someone safely in and out of that, quickly in and out of an exercise. So then you can deepen it, you can correct it, you can do those things you need to do. And some of that needs to become automatic. You were talking about muscle memory and kinds of things that you look at when you guys do studies in the physical therapy world. Well, the same goes here. So take some of the load off by making them become a practice enough individually and demonstrate and get feedback from a coach on their how do you get in and out? So some of the teaching techniques there, we integrate the program together. So we're learning the skill, the exercise in isolation, because if I said teach a class, it's way too much. So we build it out. But we do it all every week. So you have a set of, say, 7 exercises. You're going to demonstrate those. You're going to learn the fundamental anatomy, practical anatomy associated with it. It works this muscle or this, whatever. Here's what we call 1, 2, 3s, but it could be the setup, whatever. Very, very structured. Memorize that. We don't want you to have to think about that when you're trying to teach. And then they video themselves, they give feedback. And so there's an information layer there, but not a ton of information. Everything everything has demonstration and then feedback. The other thing now is you can get your own feedback too. Just like with Montessori, when the child puts the thing together, they see it doesn't work. Well, when you watch yourself in video, you think, oh my goodness, I thought I was better than that. I thought I had that right, and I'm not. My form is off. You don't have to be a star
Correct.
I'll say yogi, but you have to know the form correctly and be able to demonstrate with correction. So we do that. And then that little bit of information, and we start teaching skills or teaching essential techniques, what I'll call them, throughout the course. So we don't do it all at once. We don't just give you a PDF and say your voice should be this. So there's a way to use your voice. There's a way, all these things, and we integrate them and kind of parse them out. We also believe in, so there's practice there. Then we believe in teaching right from the get-go. So how do we start to get them in a teaching mode? Yes, teaching right from week 1. So if we learned 7 exercises in week 1, then we work to cluster those in groups. So maybe you'll take 3 of them, say it's mat Pilates, you're going to teach a series 3, and you're going to think about how you deliver it. You're going to think about how you your voice is, and you will teach that. Say 3 different videos of teaching. You will get feedback to help you grow and correct in that area. And then we do, and so that starts to build out the process that every expert goes through to become an expert. So I've looked at all the theory. I read it. I'm kind of a weirdo that way, but Anders Ericsson, who died in the last few years, was at Florida State, but he looked at expert performance across the board. He looked at athletes, he looked at musicians, he looked at mathematicians, and he found this process called deliberate practice, which is how every expert evolves. It has to be frequent, has to be consistent, has to be built, has to have a coach, has to be a lot of practice. So we integrate that theory. We don't talk about the theory particularly, but that's integrated in, and that's how you build out. Then you can layer in some other things. We do, teach a student over a cross period of time, how do you create a safe and effective Pilates class or Pilates for students? What is the format of a class? You don't just jump them into the most, the peak point of your exercises. You have to build up to it. You come down from it. And we start them thinking. We play little, fun things. We might say, if you're, give us a topic. If I'm in Pilates, and I'm not going to be speaking to your audience, but in fitness generally, and someone's got, I'm working with runners. So how do I craft a class, a program that fits runners from the Pilates perspective? Yep. And we have to start to look at that and start to put together a script, essentially a class, because that teaches them in real time. It's more effective because it's not just talking at them about that, how a class actually flows out. And they build that. Then you can toss in things like, how would you market that class? How would you do things? Because everybody who's in a studio is in sales of some sort, or they have to. And so that's kind of what we do. And we do that, repeat that process every week.
Yeah.
By the time they get to the end, the competency is they teach that class they've developed. They teach it to an audience they've recruited, might be, and they teach that at the end of the program, the teacher training. So not only have they built up to it, now they get a full class, they've gotten feedback, they've refined it, they've improved it, they see themselves, they take classes during the time we tell them what classes to take on demand or whatever.
Mhm.
studio, and then that comes out the other end. And by the time you get to the end, every student, I'm in a classroom because I've had it in classrooms, every student has a base level of competency.
Right.
Every student. And then we bring them in. We also do in real-time practice sessions. You can do them in Zoom. We do them in Zoom, but you could do them in studio if yours was all local every week, where you come in and you demonstrate, you practice, you kind of, if you put it in a athletic perspective, you'd say you drill what you've been learning. So those things all come together in a very integrated fashion. By the time you get to the end of your program, bring them into the studio for a more in-depth, take them to the next level a little bit in like 2-3 days but everybody comes in and you know where everybody's at.
Right.
So
yes.
that's kind of how we build out. And that's the kind of process that can be applied. Doesn't matter what the content is, really.
Right. It's great. No, I think that's so true, because a lot of teacher training programs, they teach you all the exercises, they teach you and then your final is teaching, but you haven't been assessed at teaching the whole time. And so unless someone is already a teacher of some sort of movement, the teaching part is the hardest part. They get confused on their cueing. I know that I love that you have 1, 2, 3s. We have action, body part, where it's like very specific. Reach your arm forward. Like that. I'm like, that's it. Okay. Once you become proficient, then you can layer on additional language, but it's really hard to do that at the beginning, right? And so I love that it's very systematic.
Yep.
So when you were talking about, okay, I'm just going to, I'll take yoga because yoga. So
Yep.
you're teaching downward dog or maybe chaturanga, right? So that's the exercise. So now they are sending in they're recording themselves, do it. Are they uploading this video into the portal?
Yep. Directly into the LMS. Yep.
Okay. And then in what aspect are they getting feedback? Is that, so I'm recording myself doing a chaturanga. I upload my video into the LMS, and the LMS, by the way, for people, if you don't know what that means, it's learning management system. Now what's the next step? Somebody looks at it and then sends me feedback. So what's the next step?
So we are really big on having one coach, and we train coaches to do this, but one coach for a group. Okay. And that's because then they know that's very consistent. So in other words, we don't pride ourselves on saying we have 10 different coaches and you're going to get feedback from a lot of different people. No, when you're learning, when you're first starting and you're trying to get your basics down, you need one person to give you feedback. So you upload your video into the learning management system. Very simple. It's a very easy, intuitive thing to do. And your coach, who you've been working with, can click on your video, watch it, and then record a video back to you and say, hey, Christa, I really love the way you did this. You really applied the feedback from last week. Here are a couple pointers I want you to focus on going forward. And then they can also give you written feedback right there at the same place. Right. And you get that for every single assignment. Yeah. So that you not only you're developing community and a relationship. If you look at the most effective learning over years has been a one-to-one tutor, but who can afford to hire a one-to-one tutor to work them through for weeks on end? It's impossible. But
and studios can't afford that. No, like studios can't afford to do one-to-one training forever because we need lots of it's not sustainable.
It's impossible. No. Yeah. So this coach works with you, and you're developing community with your team or the people that you're in the class with because of these once a week practice sessions. So you're getting that feedback. So everything is we typically have assignments due 3 times a week. We break it up. True confessions. When I first launched the yoga, I said, okay, there is a lot of flexibility for folks, by the way. There's very little real time. You just have to meet the assignment deadlines. But I said, we'll have all the assignments due on the end of the week, and that'll give people lots of flexibility. And guess what happens? They wait, just like everybody else. They wait till the very end. They can't get them all done, or they get them all done and it's a hurried mess. And so we schedule them here. So from the beginning, the assignments are due every week on these days. and there's a purpose for why we do that. That's even got a method to the madness. It's so that you can get feedback before you do the next thing.
Correct.
Which are all building. So that's how we kind of work it. And
yeah,
so,
that's perfect.
yeah.
And is the coach one of your coaches, the STFU, or is that the studio's coach?
That would be the studio. So this is my kind of vision for how this can help fitness. If I'm a studio, as you've noted, it doesn't matter what the modality, I need to be able to train teachers and get a consistent quality product. And sometimes, and if you've ever run a teacher training, which I know you have, and you're doing it, it is an overwhelming task. Not only
overwhelming.
Forget about just creating all the assets, so to speak, but then you have to practice delivering it, and then you are tying up your space time, and then and it's like overwhelming. I compare it to, like, say you do a training camp for an athlete, like you see like boxers doing whatever, and you come in for 10 days, 30 days, whatever. That's overwhelming. It can be exhausting.
It's exhausting.
There's only so much
it's exhausting.
you can do. Yeah.
It's
in
exhausting.
a day. So if you can take that piece out and get better results. So what we do is we license the standard program to a studio. They pay a fee. And once they do that, we can white label it, or we can put their brand on it. We'll put their logo on it. We'll take their brand colors and insert them. We put their face in, and we train a coach. We have a training program, both online and manual, and working with our coach to train them on how do you give feedback. So we have them practice giving feedback by showing them example videos from.
Right. And you're teaching them how to be teach teachers.
Yes. But they don't have to deliver content. That's all off their back. Yes. Now, if one of the big objections, people say, well, I teach I have a proprietary way of teaching. I'm unique in the universe. No one teaches it this way. Frankly, I haven't found that even at university with PhDs who are very eminent scholars. But we say, look, chaturanga, say you teach it a little bit slightly different than our instructional video, which is white labeled. The person doesn't have a Reiki on, it's just a plain shirt. And it's your logo, your coach's face, your message, and you're doing the teaching. If your objection is that, I would ask you to step back and think about, do you use textbooks? Do you use handouts from other groups? And most do. So think about this course as a textbook. And with all the worksheets have your logo on it. We just put your logo on. If you have a unique way of teaching one thing, like chaturanga or down dog, or you call it something slightly different, when they finish, you can say, at our studio, we do this a little bit, but just like you would if you were teaching from a textbook. So think about it that way. And I will promise you that the student always remembers the coach, not the textbook. So think about back. I've been out of my college days for many, many, many years, longer than you've been alive. And here's what I can tell you. I remember the best teachers I had.
Right.
I do not remember the textbooks or the books that we read. Absolutely. I remember the best teachers because they were the ones I remember the most were the toughest and made me work the hardest and gave me feedback and made me practice and get better.
And made you understand things in a way that stuck.
Absolutely. Even when it was uncomfortable for me.
Exactly. For sure.
And so I think that, so that's the position you have to take. And then you don't have to create it's very expensive, as you mentioned earlier, very expensive and time consuming. We can all say, I could do it myself. Okay. It takes most people probably a year if they can get it done.
I mean, listen, I'll tell you exactly because we just did this and I'm already, listen, people, I have my own built out teacher training program. And I've already talked to Nora about being like, I think I could totally use this in my system, because what we don't have is the curriculum that she developed. And so here's what I'm going to say to people. You're either going to spend time or money. Okay. And what I can tell you is it took Pilates in the Grove. And now I developed my curriculum 6 or 7 years ago. And I developed it very specifically from my physical therapy background. I'm not a classically trained Pilates instructor, so it is contemporary. And it's took us 2 years to get the first thing correct. We had to pay for a photographer. We had to pay for the manuals. We had to print the manuals. We had to put them in PDFs. Then everyone started going digital. So now we took us 18 months, and I didn't even do it. Thank God for Terry and Kelly that did 18 months to fully digitize our program, then get that edited, then get that uploaded. And it still requires us, Nora, and what you're saying is true. It still requires us to teach this in very long format. So when our students come in to do our live in person, right? Because not everyone has a reformer at home. So we do have a live component to it. It's all day, Saturday and Sunday, all day, 9 to 6. And so not only are the instructors, are people teaching it exhausted, because now they're working 7 days a week, right? Because they have their whole week, and then they're working the weekend. The students are overwhelmed. That is a lot of exercises to go through in one weekend. Then we're like, okay, bye-bye, go practice, right? And so I can tell you, and I can tell everyone listening, you say the same thing. I can create it my own. You can. Like, there's not when Pilates instructors are like, oh, it's proprietary. No, it's fucking not. It's the same fucking exercise. It's not proprietary. Okay. Joseph Pilates did not copyright a single thing. Okay. So the way and the way that I would get around. So the perfect example that you said of like, well, I teach it a little different. I am not a classically trained instructor, nor are our instructors classically trained. However, I could say in the video, and what we do in our manuals all the time is say, classically, Joseph Pilates taught it this way. In our studio, we teach it this way, and here's why. Okay. And if you know anything about Pilates, you understand too that the Gratz equipment is built a little bit differently, the way the spring tension is loaded. And so it will feel different. So I want people to know, oh, so if I see it in a studio taught this way, right? But I hear it this way, I'm going to know where it came from. Another great example is in yoga. And correct me if I'm wrong, but in yoga uses bridging as an extension-based prep. So a lot of yoga instructors will use bridging prior to like full wheel, okay? In Pilates, we use bridging as like an articulation. So we don't want our people to go into this full extension. And so I will tell my clients, if you go to yoga class, they're going to cue you differently. And that's not wrong. It's just a different way to do it. So you can totally include that in the teaching. If I'm giving if I'm giving feedback to you, Nora, I could say, I see you're pulling in your yoga practice, and I love that. Understand that in Pilates, we may want you to cue it this way.
Yeah. And so, Christa, that is exactly right. And so when you said, you learn how to get someone with your, the sequence that you get someone into an exercise, we don't introduce the cueing part once they're in until they're comfortable, until several weeks in. Why? It's too overwhelming.
Too much.
The other thing, yep. So what happens in most curriculum, and this will be yoga, I'll use Yoga Alliance, sets a standard, right? And they say, cover this. And so what I see almost to a T is, this week we're going to do anatomy. Next week we're going to do poses. Next week we're going to talk about how do you teach. And really, it's a process that kind of intersects, and you have to integrate it. So the other thing that's really helpful for using this kind of approach, one, you don't have to create the content. Two, you don't have to pay for the learning management system, which costs thousands of dollars every year. And that's all set up for you. You don't have to worry about the technology. You don't have to worry about how to do it. That's all done for you. Now you can do the thing you do best, and that's help a student get from here to here.
Yes.
And that's what you are and without the strain on you. Now, at every studio, think about the time the one person decides to leave, your one key person that instructs for you all the time, and they give you a 2-week notice because they're moving out of the area and they whatever. And oh my God, we've got to hire another, but we are not going to run a teacher training for, the next 6 months or 12 months. This program, you can scale up and down. You have one student, you can teach them. You put them right through it. You can do it. If you have, 10 students, or, you can do it 3 times a year, 5 times a year, 1 time a year, whatever suits you. What it takes the place of what either creating your own, which you can do, time and expense, and then the risk that you won't get it right, but you'll take time to fix it after you do it. Bring someone in. I know this is popular in Pilates and yoga, where
but very expensive.
Very expensive.
And the studio's not making, I'll tell you this, you're not making any money as a studio if you bring someone else in. And you can only do that if you have so many people doing it, which does not help the process of like, I need an instructor yesterday.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So those are the kinds of things that this allows you to do. And then, like I said, it gives you the ability to do what you do best. And it doesn't overwhelm you. This is something that's, it kind of, I hate to say it's like in the can, it's already done, it's in the box, but it's very thoughtfully put together in a way that gets to the end.
To the end result.
Your studio and you are the focus. You are what your students will remember. And like you said, what you do with classical Pilates. Now, I will say that I know that in Pilates that the exam that is a certifying
the NCPT exam
is very important to a lot of folks. And so there's a couple ways we're looking at what we do there. One is we do have multiple choice questions every week that just to test knowledge. We do that early when we're introducing exercises or whatever. And so you can start to get that, those kinds of things. So your students are practicing that. And then, to be frank, I won't use Pilates. I'll use personal trainers, for example. I can go out to Amazon and buy a study guide, just like I could if I was taking the SAT. And I can prep myself up for those tests. So if the concern is your first concern most in the studio on the ground is, can they teach? But then the next concern for some studios is, can they pass these exams? And I would say that, again, like the SAT, people prep for those things. But I will also say, I'm a pretty quick study when it comes to like being able to take in a bunch of information, and then I'm a pretty good reader, so I can kind of sort through multiple choice. And if you gave me enough time, I could probably prep and pass some of those tests, not teach a lick of anything.
Yeah. But I can tell you from the Pilates, again, I can speak from Pilates, and I at one point was someone that was helping making exam questions for that exam. It's just a multiple choice exam. And what they're trying to do is just say that at least people that have qualified to sit for the exam have gone through an actual program. They didn't go to Amazon and get a weekend. And some people teach weekend courses. So even with your program, the way that it qualifies is that, so it would still be, so technically Pilates in the Grove has a teacher training program. We use Strength Through Focus University as our online LMS system. There's still an amount of hours that the student has to sit through there to watch the videos and everything. And that just counts as the hours. So for the NCPT exam, they just have to complete 450 hours. But now this is even more, it's just more, they're more accountable for it, right? Like, that they've done the work, so they can still sit for the exam. And the NCPT just started doing just a mat exam, because before you couldn't sit for anything until you did all of this comprehensive work. On the back end, legally, you don't need that. No one's coming to arrest you. Like, if I practice without a license, I could go to jail, but no one's coming to arrest me if I don't have a certification. The only time I tell people that sometimes the certification is beneficial is, so for example, Pilates in the Grove is a small 2-studio location in Miami. If someone moved to California and wanted to teach and said, oh, I got certified at Pilates in the Grove, that person may be like, well, I don't know what that studio is. And so if they say, and I've passed the NCPT exam. They just know that my program was quality enough to allow this person to sit. Does it mean anything else?
Yeah.
No. Right.
Absolutely. And I'm not opposed to that. I actually, believe in standards and all that. And so I think that's a good thing. What I will say is, and so what our job is to make sure that they're prepared to be able to do that. But
Exactly.
the first criteria is, can they actually teach?
You're
And so,
100% right.
and you cannot measure that by hours. And in
Nope.
education, we always measure by hours, seat time. Do you have enough seat time? But seat time doesn't tell me anything. And
You're right.
so that's why we established right from the beginning, these are the competencies. You'll demonstrate 50 yoga poses. You will understand the basic anatomy, practical anatomy. You'll have cueing. You'll know how to advance that pose and how to modify that for someone who needs modification. You're going to practice teach this many hours, and you're going to get feedback on all of that. And ultimately, you're going to demonstrate that you can teach a class.
Yeah.
And all of those things. And then we're going to bring you in. And that's where we're going to go to the next place. We're going to start doing, if I have special populations, I have whatever. What you can't do, you can't try to cram everything into the foundation. You can't, because it overwhelms everyone. What it gives your studio owner is the opportunity to actually have flexibility in how often they offer it, have it branded that looks like their program. It's a textbook. They can think about it that way, have incredible contact with students. The students that our students going through programs like ours have more one-to-one contact with their coach than any in-person program
No, you're
I've
probably
ever
right. Yeah.
And
it's a lot. It's exhausting.
yeah.
And so this type of program that you offer is taking a lot of the work off the studio. So some people would be like, but it's expensive. But if it took you 18, let's just, I'm going to be very objective here. Let's say I charge $150 an hour for a private Pilates session, right? And now it takes me 18 months and 5 or 6 hours a month to record this video, edit this video. I'm not that good at math, so I'm gonna have to pull my calculator up here. But so if I charge $150, right, and it takes me 5 hours a month, right, times 18 months, that's already over $13,000 that I'm dedicating to this versus not seeing a Pilates client, right?
Mm.
So if you look at it from that, I mean, I guess if you don't have money, you have to spend your time, but a lot of us don't have the time. That's why we're not doing it. And so you can spend the money to pay, Strength Through Focus University, the licensing fee, and now be able to run your program 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year.
Right.
And your instructors are not going to be, your teacher trainers are not going to be exhausted providing the service.
Absolutely. And you're going to come out with a student that
Exactly.
And so if you have 10 people in there, you're going to know by the time you get to the end which ones you want to hire.
Exactly.
Because you will have seen them in action. And so because if you can go out, and let me talk about yoga, you can go out and buy a curriculum. You can buy the manual, you can buy someone's PowerPoint slides. You still have to teach it. You still have to evaluate
train them, mentor them.
All of that you have to do. And so you can buy that, and you can buy them, I know in Pilates, you can buy one for, 10,000, you can buy them for 7,000 in yoga, you can buy whatever, you can buy this, curriculum, PDFs and PowerPoints and whatever. Now, here's the other thing. I also see a lot in yoga where they take a very long period of time to train. In yoga, they have 200-hour certification. That's the basic one. And then they have an additional 300 on top of it for a 500. So you can do one or both, but I see this a lot. 200 is where most of the studios actually teach teacher training. There are some 300, but not as many. But everybody, practically a lot of people have the 200. Now, if I decide I'm going to teach that one weekend a month for the next month, then what happens? Here's what happens. The learning is lost because you can't have that distance between the learning. And so, or you can say, if you do it 8 weekends in a row, it just kills people. And then what happens when 3 people have this weekend, I can't make it. Next
Mhm.
weekend, I can't make it.
Mhm.
Next weekend, I can't make it. I'm going to be out of town. And so then you get into that. Now,
We have
yoga
that all the time.
all the time. Here, oh, you're going to be, someplace, when you signed up, you can make some little things. You can't sign on Zoom because you're on an airplane. Fine, we'll do a makeup for you, but you still be someplace where there's internet typically, and you can do some of this. So I think that that's another factor. You've got to look at the consistency in the learning, the frequency, the repetitiveness that it requires to learn a skill. And teaching is a skill. It's a separate skill from doing the practice.
You're
So
totally right.
yeah, so those things come together, and that gives you the flexibility, like I said. So is it expensive? I think that it would not be an exaggeration to say, to build out an entire program, digitized, doing all the videoing, like you said, hiring the videographers, hiring the editors, hiring the people and the writers and all that. It would not be unrealistic to say you're going to spend $30,000-$40,000 easily, easily
And your
50,000.
time. And your
And
time.
yeah, you could also go out, and there are companies that will work with you to build your own program over 3 or 4 months, and they're very expensive as well. And they don't know your product. They'll help you map out your curriculum, but the tendency could be, I'm not saying it is, they may have this right, but I'm saying it might be to say, here's Yoga Alliance's a list of standards. You need to have so many hours of anatomy. You need to have so many hours of this. And the tendency they will have on many times is to try to do that the same way you would, this topics list, what I'd call a topics list, as opposed to looking at the competencies. So those are the kinds of things, but you can do all those things. But
Yeah,
I
but
think
why? Nora and her people, her team have created this for you. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. She's done the work, she's done the research, and her background in and I really am passionate about this, that it's important to teach how to be a good teacher. I tell my teachers this all the time. It does not matter what you teach. It matters how you teach it. I can teach a Pilates class with the same 9 exercises, and every time people come out of the class, are like, that was amazing.
Mhm.
That was amazing. I'm like, we didn't do anything different. It's how you teach it. And that's becoming a teacher. And so many of our programs don't teach people how to be teachers. They just teach the exercises. And then they wonder why their people aren't successful. Okay. It's like going to a course. It's like why, as a studio owner, I don't pay more for certifications necessarily, because someone can go sit in a workshop for 5 hours, get the certificate, and come back and be no better, right? So it's how you implement what you're learning. Okay.
Mhm.
And now you're right. Some people take longer than others? Of course. If somebody's gone through a yoga teacher training and they're an amazing yoga instructor, will they probably go through Pilates teacher training very fast? Yes, because they've learned the skill of being a teacher.
Mhm.
Right. And so your program, your software is what I think boutique fitness needs, especially even so if you're a smaller business owner, even generating like, low to mid 6 figures right now, and you're thinking, oh, I don't have the money. I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to entice you to think differently. You don't have the time. Okay. You don't have the time. So if you can pay upfront, now I'm not telling anyone to go broke. I'm not telling you to go in the red. However, if you pay for this upfront, you've got a solid system in place, and you can generate revenue during a teacher training program without as much work. So you can't think of like the first time you run the program. Okay. Maybe the first time you run the program, you're underwater a little bit. That's okay. But the second time, the third time, and then in perpetuity, now you're in the black. Okay. And I'm sure as you start to like roll this out, you'll be like, oh, we can improve on this and we
Mhm.
can improve on this, certainly from feedback from your customers. And
Mhm.
so, there's a gazillion more questions that I could ask you, but I want to be respectful of your time and I want to make sure that our listeners don't tune us out. But so I'm going to ask you to share your information. Where can people find, and I know you gave us, so she was kind enough to give us a little resource, which we're going to link in the show notes, that you can go grab some resource about Strength Through Focus University and all of the programs they have. But where can they find more information from you or reach out to you if they want to set up a meeting with you and learn more?
Yeah. So if you go to strengththroughfocus.com, you will be able to get to a landing page where you can set up a call. I'd love to talk to people about what they're working, because everybody has a unique situation.
Mhm.
And I will say that our goal, I know what it's like to be in fitness. I understand the tight budgets. I understand coming back off COVID. I understand all that. And our goal is not to break people. I don't want people broken. And so, and we can talk about how fast you can recoup your licensing fee by just having several students, and you will get your licensing fee back.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, can you be able to do what we've talked about? Can you get the right teacher training at the times you need it and without the heavy lift? Because
Yep.
the heavy lift is a killer.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And for those
So
of you that are like,
yeah,
strengththroughfocus.com, reach out to Nora. And if there's studio owners that are like, how could this work for me? And you want to reach out to me, Christa at PilatesInTheGrove.com, or DM me over on Instagram. I'm at Christa Gurka. I will tell you how you can make this work for you, even if you already have a fledgling teacher training program. Okay. I can tell you, I'll help you strategize how this can work for you in the long run, and put you in touch with Nora too, because she's done a really amazing job at building out this program. And I thank you so much for coming on.
thank
This was
you. I
really, I could
appreciate
talk
it.
to you for hours about this.
Yeah.
I think it's really what the industry needs. And I think you're solving a really, really important problem in our entire, and I'm not just talking about Pilates and yoga, everywhere, personal trainers, strength training, kettlebell gyms, spinning, like everyone in our industry is going through the same thing. So this is a need. And I say, like all businesses, like great businesses, find a problem and create the solution. And I think you're doing that. So any last words for people,
No,
Nora?
I just it's exciting to work in this space. I love the fitness. It's very positive, making change in people's lives, and I think it's seriously important, especially now. So
I agree. I
appreciate
agree.
it.
Well, thanks so much for joining
Thank you.
us. And until next time, ladies, bye for now.
Thanks.